My name is Gabriel Bayarri. I am a political anthropologist and my research is focused on the construction of the far right in different contexts. Today I'm going to speak specifically about the case of Brazil and the construction of the violent project based on the Memetic campaign. This analysis is based on the fieldwork that I did during the elections that gave the victory to Jair Messias Bolsonaro. As you know, a meme is a minimum unit of cultural information which helps to create cognitive interpretation charts. Our proposal is that the meme transmitted were fundamental in the victory of Bolsonarism. But talking about Bolsonaro, despite high rates of inequality and structural racism and enormous rates of violence, Brazilians elected the ultra-right-wing Jair Messias Bolsonaro as president of the Republic in 2018. Bolsonaro had articulated a frontier of political identification, that is, the good citizen who would be any voter of his against the vandals. The vandals would be any person against him, and who, through a process of hygienization characteristic of fascism, will not be a person with worthy moral substance, that is, a person who could be attacked and eliminated. In this process of construction of citizenship, rights and criminalization of part of the population, the memes that circulated during the campaign were fundamental. So using the humor and irony, these memes allowed the violence towards different groups to be normalized. Here we can see some examples of these memes that were circulated during the campaign in WhatsApp and Facebook. The memes were extracted from groups of Bolsonarist sympathizers. Mentioned in the construction of the enemy, the opposite actor is required, the hero. So this image represents Trump and Bolsonaro as strong heroes, ready to save their homeland. Trump and Bolsonaro are compared to Rambo, and the message is that the enemy will just be destroyed only if they use the violence. So the message reinforces the dichotomy of good versus evil, of the good citizen versus the vandal. The image represents the hero against the enemy. Are some examples of the attack on feminist women and LGBTQ collectives. During the electoral campaign, the hashtag #EleNow, that means not him, was created to reject Bolsonaro's candidacy. Due to the success of the hashtag, Bolsonarist sectors decided to create the opposite hashtag, #LSim, that means yes to him. So this image shows, on the one hand, how the women who support Bolsonaro will act. They will be morally ethical, take care of their children, respect the family, and maintain hygienic practices and public image. Against this, the feminists who are against Bolsonaro will try to be reflected as dirty and immoral, as promiscuous and disrespectful of traditions. In this comparison, a moral border is established, the good against the evil, the dirty against the clean, and the Bolsonarism reinforces the criminalization of feminism and women's rights. In this image, a moral dichotomy is also constructed. On the left side, we can see a person in women's clothing and the word before. On the right side, we see the same person, dressed differently. In the image, we can read, "Now with Jesus." This image will try to criminalize the LGBTQ collectives by saying that they have no morals and ethics. The constructed story will be that to become a good citizen, you will have to believe in Jesus. Jesus will be the solution, and to the end, of the transsexuality that is understood as a defect. Bolsonarism has strongly supported the evangelist discourse, and the morality of this religion permeates the whole political project of building an enemy. A man is seen kissing a child next to flags of gay pride. Under the image, we read the phrase, "That is the right they want, and if you don't agree, they will call you a homophobe." The message tries to normalize the idea that the LGBTQ collective would want to sexually pervert children. The family should be protected because these people will be putting at risk a supposed moral cleansing that children have. The use of children in the Bolsonarist project has been recurrent as a way of building the enemy. Any person potentially dangerous to Bolsonarism will be dangerous to children. Children are understood as the core of a traditional moral, religious, and family project. The vandal will be dangerous because he could physically attack children. The LGBTQ collectives could be an attack on the immaculate morals of children. In the same vein, teachers will also be teaching sexuality and Marxism in the classroom. The message reads, "These are the men who say not Bolsonaro." The message tries to degrade a certain type of aesthetic linked to femininity. The manly features are, in contrast, valued. So the image normalizes the idea that if you want to be a real man, you must support Bolsonaro, and the effeminate will vote for the left. Bolsonaro's construction of masculinity is related to his violent project. Only through violent force, political objectives will be achieved, and people who attack that project are necessarily effeminate and therefore ridiculous and assumable as second class. In this image, you can see several Chihuahuas from the Star Wars saga. The title reads, "First National Meeting of the Women's Group Against Bolsonaro." The image tries to say that the women who do not support Bolsonaro will be hated and will not shave. Bolsonarism identifies these practices as part of the dirt that will characterize feminism. Thus, the message is that women who are good women vote for Bolsonaro and also shave their bodies. In this line, Bolsonaro's violence against women includes the symbolic submission of women to a type of traditional and repressive aesthetic. Women will only have rights if they took care of their bodies. Otherwise, they must be ridiculed as part of the monstrosity that makes up the ideological spectrum of progressivism. Here now we see some examples of racism to Afro-Brazilian through the attack on the poor, almost all of them negros and from the northeast of the country. So these people were criticized for having access to social benefits such as a house, a basic income, or a quote for access to universities. Image. We see a large family of Afro-Brazilians on a motorbike. The written message says, "Going to take out the Bolsa Familia." This message refers to a social project called Bolsa Familia, or family stipend, a kind of basic income aimed to vulnerable populations. However, the neoliberal project of Bolsonarism attacks this type of assistance policy. Thus, they represent the profile of the person who will take advantage of the Brazilian welfare system. These people will be black and will have many children. According to Bolsonarism Rathin's theory, the beneficiaries of the Bolsa Familia will have countless children in order to qualify for more social benefits. So, the poor and Afro-Brazilian population is also excluded from recognition as full citizens. In this image, we can see another criticism of vulnerable groups. A man is drinking beer. Next to him stands a house built with beer cans. The text says, Minha casa, minha vida, that means, my home, my life. This is another social assistance project to provide public housing to the people who need it most and who live in favelas. However, the Bolsonarism criminalizes these groups by trying to represent them as alcoholics who would use the housing system to buy drinks. In this image, the text says, what is the best social program? At the top, there is an Afro-Brazilian woman showing her Bolsa Familia card. At the bottom, a young, white, thin woman shows a card that reads Bolsonaro. The representation will try to degrade the Afro-Brazilian groups who are poor and receive social assistance. In front of them, the good citizen will be white, will comply with Western stereotypes, and will vote for Bolsonaro. This image establishes a clear hierarchy between two individuals. One will belong to a despicable, attackable, ridiculous social class, and the other to a recognized social class that does not need help to get ahead. The white woman will not need social assistance. She herself, by her merits, will achieve her goals. However, the Afro-Brazilian woman will need assistance as she will be less hardworking or lazy without considering the structural inequalities. Thus, the image strongly reflects the meritocratic features of Bolsonarism. Here, we see some examples of the anti-intellectual component of the far right, such as the attack on teachers accused of teaching sexuality in the classroom, and the attack on artists accused of collecting money from the state in the so-called Rouanet law. This image shows a happy traditional family. The message reads, "Don't change what you have learned with your family for what a Marxist teacher teaches you." The dichotomy of this image is between the traditional family versus the thoughts of the left wing. Teachers could be manipulating children's minds, and in the face of that, Bolsonarism reminds us that the traditional family, composed of happy white parents and grandparents, will be the solution. It also positions the family institution above the school institution. Hierarchically, what is learned in the family will have more moral value than what is learned at school. In this image, we can see Karl Marx with African features. In this way, it is a question of ridiculing Marx's thought, since representing him as a black man will no longer be a serious thought. The black Marx is transformed, as it says in the text, in a pseudo-intellectual one. In this image, we see two parallel photographs in a classroom. In the image on the left, we can read, "The days were like this," and there are some young students dressed in a uniform with a serious face. In the image on the right, you can read, "The days were like this," and several students appear dancing provocatively in the middle of the class. The image tries to represent the idea that sexualization has depraved morals. it is a feeling of nostalgia. In the past, during the period of military dictatorship, women were serious, morally acceptable, aesthetically clean. However, today women will have been educated to sexualize space. Implicitly, the group of teachers who will be responsible for this alleged moral depravity is under attack. Moral value is also given to the past, which in Brazil means giving value to the recent military dictatorship. In this way, the image is saying that democracy has brought a dirty way of thinking that the military will not allow. It is a call to military action, to evoke a supposedly better, more decent past. Finally, here we see the attack on the political opposition, accused of being corrupt, anti-patriotic, and for which messages were articulated using scatological language. You can see the representation of excrement surrounded by flies. The message says, "They just moved the flies." This is the anti-establishment discourse that Bolsonarism represents. All politicians will be comparable to flies circling excrements, but the system itself, that is, democracy as it exists, will be the central structural problem. Voting for other politicians will not work. The system must be changed, and to change the system the only option will be to vote for Bolsonaro. In this image, we see the candidate of the Workers' Party, Fernando Haddad, represented with the body of a cockroach. Part of the scatological language of Bolsonarism tries to trivialize violence, dehumanize the enemy, and present him as something dirty. To use representations of insects to dehumanize the enemy is not something new. It happened during the Nazism. The Jews were compared to cockroaches, and they had to be exterminated with the same techniques as the cockroaches, that is, with insecticide spray, and taken to the human case in the gas chambers. Through humor and irony, they are normalizing the political opposition as an insect, a technique from the times of fascism and Nazism. We see Bolsonaro whipping the opposition candidate Fernando Haddad with a flip-flop. The flip-flop represents the flag of Brazil. The image conveys the violence that must be exercised against the political opponent. The opposition and their ideas must not be respected, but must be whipped in the name of something greater, in the name of Brazil. The use of the Brazilian flag on the flip-flop shows how the nationalist project justifies the use of violence. If it is a question of saving Brazil from its enemies, any technique is possible. In this image, we see an X-ray of a skull. The skull will be, according to the text, of a voter from the Workers' Party. The skull, instead of a brain, will have excrement surrounded by flies. In this way, the Bolsonarism ridicules anyone who does not think like them. It shows that any person who votes for another political option will be because he or she does not know how to think since he does not have a brain. So this is a clear expression of Bolsonaro's political intolerance. And so, having no brains, it will not be necessary to convince the political adversary. The remedy is to vote for Bolsonaro, and this does not require understanding and dialogue, but rather an imposition on constructed enemies. So, some conclusions. Bolsonaro's project of building hegemony consisted of an alliance of a cultural, political, and economic project. the articulation of the large landowners in the country's agricultural sector, the evangelical churches, and the army, a power bloc capable of activating mechanisms of barbarism. Their interests are far removed from those of the popular classes. They view it themselves as defenders of a political project characterized by the privatization of public services, post-colonial racism, an attack on minorities, and the use of violent force against the peripheral regions and areas inhabited by the popular classes. So, the obvious contradiction, however, was justified by saying that Bolsonaro was a man of the people, that is, a man who could put order in the house in the face of the corruption of the political class. So this classification shows how memes were fundamental in the construction of a frontier of political identification, which simplified and criminalized part of the population through the use of humor and irony. So thank you very much for your attention. I leave my email in case you are interested in keeping in touch for future collaborations. Thank you very much.